Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the Circular Economy Deep Dive series. The topic for today will be construction and demolition. My name is Deep Chahal, and I am a project manager with Synergy Foundation. I work with businesses across the province to assess and improve their environmental performance, as well as creating these educational webinars on various topics of sustainability and circular economy. Before we begin, I'd like to share a little bit about Synergy Foundation. Since 2013, our nonprofit has been driving innovation in green business, circular economy initiatives, and food security programs, especially through our key projects like BC Green Business and Project Zero. We've supported hundreds of businesses in making sustainable shifts, and we're so excited to have you here as a part of the Squamish webinar series, which is funded by the province of BC's Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program. So let's dive in. On the agenda today will be an introduction to circular economy, followed by looking at the impact of construction and demolition, making a case for why we should be going circular, implementing circularity, and then looking at businesses that are making the shift. So let us start by looking at the problem that circular economy is trying to address. And that is in 2020, the mass of human-made materials officially outweighed that of our biomass. This means that everything we've produced from buildings, cars, plastic now surpasses the combined weight of all plants, animals, and marine life on Earth. This statistic underscores why we need to rethink our consumption and waste habits. This calculation only includes objects that are currently in use, so it doesn't include waste. With waste included, human-made mass outweighed biomass in 2013. We know that we are extracting far too many virgin resources, most of which are destined for pollution with our current linear economic model. So we really need to think of ways to decouple economic growth and natural resource consumption. Currently, most businesses operate in a linear economy. The traditional linear economy model can be described by the phrase take, make, waste. It's essentially where resources are extracted, produced, used, and then finally at the end of the life they are discarded. This model leads to massive waste and environmental degradation. In the circular economy model, on the other hand, raw materials and manufactured goods are designed to stay within the system. To do this, we use processes like reduced consumption, reuse and repair, redistribution, reconditioning, and recycling, all of which are powered by renewable energy. As you can see in this diagram here, the inner loops are smaller. These areas of circularity are prioritized first as they keep the goods and materials in use at their highest value. So let's look at each of these loopback systems. Reduce, so using efficient consumption and production processes, waste can be reduced before it's even generated. Under reuse and repair, we can say that through continued reuse, maintenance, and repair, a product's useful life can be extended. Redistribute, through methods like resale and donation, a product can continue to provide value throughout its useful life instead of becoming waste. Under reconditioning, products can be restored to like new condition by a manufacturer or redistributed to and then redistributed to consumers. Finally, we have recycling. Um, Under recycling, products at the end of their life are separated into their base materials, which re-enter the production process to create new products. Recycling is generally seen as the last option, as it is the most energy intensive and requires major changes to the goods. When all other re-entry mechanisms have been exhausted, that's when recycling is utilized. Nearly 93% of all products and materials that we use on a day-to-day basis are destined for landfill, incineration, or left to break down in our waterways and on land at the end of life. This means that of all products, materials, and resources in existence, only a small percentage is re-entering the economy, or you can say our world is only 7.2% circular. So, to answer the question why shift to a circular economy, we have a couple of really compelling reasons. Number one being to meet climate targets. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change stated that to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we need to cut emissions by nearly half by 2030. The circular economy offers promising opportunities to get us headed in that right direction. And furthermore, there's the economic potential. According to Accenture, the circular economy is a $4.5 trillion opportunity. What we consider as waste can be a resource with significant untapped value. If we can shift our perception of what waste is, we have the opportunity to create new businesses and jobs and strengthen the local economy. We can identify efficiencies that lower the operating costs for businesses and create cost savings through reducing waste that is being sent to the landfill. There's reduced water consumption and energy usage. The circular built environment really aims to reduce waste and make the most of products and materials throughout their entire life. This can be done on three main principles. So the first being eliminating waste by preventing it at the start. Second is optimizing materials by making buildings and products last longer and recovering value when they are no longer needed. And finally, we have regenerating natural systems by using renewable energies and materials. The construction and demolition sector has great potential to help reduce emissions and help meet climate targets by prioritizing waste prevention and diversion through sustainable design. Building relocation and adaptive reuse, deconstruction and salvaging practices, material reuse, recycling, progressive procurement. Unfortunately, this sector still operates primarily in a linear model, and a lot of the value from materials are being lost to the economy when they have reached the end of their current life. The construction industry globally has a significant environmental impact due to its use of natural resources, high energy consumption, and the large amounts of waste generated throughout the life cycle of buildings. In Canada, construction is a major part of the economy, contributing 141 billion to the GDP in 2020. At the same time, it is responsible for one-third of the country's solid waste, which adds up to more than 4 million tons going to the landfill each year. Construction is among the largest employment sector in Squamish, which has experienced strong growth in recent years. The District of Squamish website shows that the total construction value of building permits issued in Squamish in 2021 was $113 million, with more than 229 permits issued. With all that construction and demolition comes waste. The construction and demolition sector in Squamish makes up 14% of the total waste that enters the landfill. The construction and demolition garbage disposed of in the Squamish landfill was primarily composed of organics at 46.7%, building materials at 33.3%, and paper at 7.9%. The organic waste included wood waste, landfill wood, cogeneration wood, and compostable wood. Building material waste included rigid asphalt products, rock, sand, dirt, ceramic, porcelain, masonry, insulation, and pipes. The paper waste was mostly composed of recyclable paper. As shown here, approximately 57.2% of the waste has potential to be diverted from landfill through depot drop-off like roofing shingles, concrete, PVC pipes, insulation, tiles, siding, and piping, or through recycling, composting, or used as fuel in a cogeneration plant. With increasing demands on the construction industry from customers, local governments, and the workforce to reduce environmental impact and improve sustainability, there's a good business case for circularity that offers benefits to your business as well as the environment. Here's how. Decrease your environmental impact. Implementing a waste reduction and diversion strategy that prioritizes building relocation, deconstruction, reuse, and recycling reduces your environmental footprint, benefits your community, creates local jobs, and results in lower GHG emissions. position your business as a leader. Adopting forward-thinking waste management initiatives cultivates a positive brand image and culture of sustainability. Attract and retain top talent. Integrating innovative practices attracts workers seeking values aligned employers, giving you an edge in a competitive industry. Reduce your operational costs and recover valuable materials. So, revenue from the sale of diverted used building materials can help offset cost of deconstruction, and sending only non-reusable and non-recyclable materials to the landfill decreases tipping fees cost. Stay ahead of any regulatory changes. Getting ahead of the provincial and federal laws coming into effect to track and promote waste reduction and diversion on site will keep you ahead of the curve. Some municipalities, including Squamish, have also started moving towards more sustainable purchasing practices, requiring a degree of compliance to secure a contract. The District of Squamish adopted a new procurement policy in December 2020 with objectives such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions, using low carbon materials, and prioritizing ethical sourcing. There are many avenues for circularity in the built environment, from design and procurement, building relocation and adaptive reuse, deconstruction, reuse, and waste management and diversion. Sustainability should be central to design and material selection and include early collaboration with clients, contractors, and designers. Designing out waste from the start can include practices like design for disassembly, which focuses on creating buildings that are easy to disassemble, repurpose, and recycle, minimizing waste and reducing long-term costs, or off-site manufacturing, like prefabrication, which reduces waste by maximizing material efficiency and minimizing construction waste on site. Other design considerations can include optimizing energy efficiency through passive house design, ensuring that structure is solar ready, integrating EV charger plugins, and incorporating a rainwater catchment system. Material choices should prioritize durability, reusability, recyclability, and sustainability. These materials might be renewable, recycled, repurposed, or locally sourced. Using local materials in construction helps cut down on transportation costs and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. It also supports local businesses, provides materials that are better suited to the local climate, and gives buildings a unique regional feel. Plus, it makes the project more sustainable and can help speed up the construction process. We will share a construction and demolition best practices toolkit created for the Regional District of Nanaimo at the end of this webinar, which is a great resource and offers practical tips for implementing circularity in the construction and demolition sector. Adapted reuse is when old buildings are updated and used for something new instead of being demolished, giving them a new purpose. Building relocation involves moving a structure to a new location, either maintaining its original use or transforming it. Both approaches help preserve historic architecture, reduce waste, and conserve local materials. A recent example of a building relocation involved moving a 112-year-old structure from Kitsilano to the Squamish Nation on the North Shore. The deconstruction process is the careful dismantling of a building to recover materials for reuse or recycling. The quantity of salvaged materials depends on the home's age and the quality of its construction. Homes built prior to the 1960s often feature high-quality materials, while newer homes contain more contemporary elements. Even partial deconstruction can greatly minimize waste by repurposing the materials. Through deconstruction, valuable items can be salvaged like lumber, windows, doors, flooring, baseboard trim, framing materials like cabinetry, plumbing fixtures, and appliances. Deconstruction can also generate local employment, creating 6 jobs for every 1 job in the traditional demolition. Salvaged building materials can be incorporated into new building projects, offered to your construction crew, sold online, or brought to the Squamish rebuild. Reusing materials both on-site and off-site helps keep valuable resources in circulation, cuts down on waste, and lowers disposal fees and overall costs. Scrap wood is a great resource to use on site. Consider using it to create concrete molds, back framing, or to build your own waste diversion bins and signage for your job site. To maximize waste diversion, begin with a waste management plan that details your plan for redirecting waste throughout your project. This plan should identify the materials you will divert for reuse and recycling, how you will stage materials for reuse on site, how you will haul materials from the site. Ensure that your plan is shared with your crew and that there is someone on the team responsible for implementing the plan. Here are some tips for maximizing waste diversion on your construction site. Ensure bins are right-sized for the materials you're collecting and have clear signage. This makes sorting easier for the crew and reduces contamination. Set up your waste station in a place with easy access for waste haulers and avoid areas that may interfere with construction work. Communicate the new system to your crew. Provide training on best practices. Notify all your subcontractors about your waste diversion practices and their responsibility to follow them on site. Regularly check for bin contamination to ensure materials are being properly sorted. Sea2Sky Removal offers a free downloadable signage and examples of DIY bins, which we will share again at the end of the webinar. And I would now like to bring on Maddie Best to share some real-life actions taken by businesses that she has worked with within implementing circular economy principles.
Hi, my name is Maddie Best. I'm a project manager at Synergy Foundation. The program that I work with under the foundation is called Project Zero. So we specialize in the circular economy. And a lot of what I do in my day-to-day work is working one-on-one with small and medium-sized businesses around Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast, doing deep dives on their operations and identifying opportunities to implement circularity. So today I'm going to be providing some examples of businesses that I've worked with previously in the construction and demolition industry that really exemplify ways that businesses in this industry can implement circular practices. Before I get started, I just really wanted to highlight from the beginning that none of the businesses that we work with are necessarily circular businesses. They're like just regular businesses that have been in operation for years. And a lot of them already have really great circular practices in place and have been able to implement a lot of our opportunities and see a lot of benefits beyond the environmental benefit. So this could include things like cost savings, new revenue streams, connections to other organizations in the community, really kind of building out that business network. So before I got started, I just wanted to highlight that there are a lot more benefits to circular practices just beyond the environmental benefits. So the first example that I wanted to share today was a construction firm based on Vancouver Island. So this construction firm diverges a little bit from traditional construction in that they are focused on modular building. So they have a 16,000 square foot warehouse facility mid Vancouver Island, and all of their structures are built within this facility. So structures are built on site, and then when they're 90% ready to go, they will pack them up, ship them in pieces to the final build site, and then those will be constructed there. So 90% of the work is done on site. Something that we noticed after the report, after our original site visit with them, was that they had an extremely low construction waste volume compared to traditional construction. So this metric that we were able to get here, comparing to traditional construction, this is from a report from Lighthouse Sustainability Society. We were able to get their annual volumes of construction waste and we're able to apply that to a metric of construction waste per 2,000 square foot builds, and they had significantly less than the average. So I'm going to talk about on the next slide about some of the practices that they had in place that helped them really reduce that amount of waste. Because they had such low waste, in turn they had much lower waste-related fees. So they didn't have to spend as much on waste hauling or on tipping fees. They got to spend a lot less time as well on the construction. So we'll be providing some examples of the things that they were doing that resulted in this number. So some of the low waste practices that they have, we'll be going through them. First is just prioritizing suppliers within a 50-kilometer radius. This just helps minimize transport emissions. So not necessarily applying to that waste per square foot, but really reducing waste from unnecessary transport. This really applies to the end of life or lifespan of their construction, but they put a lot of priority on selecting very durable materials that will last a long time, just to reduce the necessity of having to upgrade their buildings or just ensuring that they have a long lifespan. Another really cool practice that they had in place that I hadn't actually seen before was all of their subcontractors and employees had to sign these special agreements promising to adhere to specific waste reduction practices. So while we were on site, the whole work site in the warehouse was just incredibly tidy. They had these massive shelves in the back where they would store offcuts or excess materials rather than throwing them out or being wasteful. They would keep them in stock and wait until there was a use for these. So all of the subcontractors and all of the employees that we came across had really tidy work sites. We're making a lot of effort to minimize the amount of waste and really adhering to really tidy practices, really helping to reduce the amount of waste that went to landfill or recycling, and reducing the burden on everybody. Another thing that they put a lot of thought into was that kind of upfront measurement practice. So put a lot of time at the very beginning of projects into ensuring that the materials that they ordered and the materials that they were cutting were exactly right to size, just minimizing those offcuts. Another benefit of their construction practice was that since they were constructing in the 16,000 square foot warehouse, there was a lot less potential for weather damaged materials and things could go out a little bit faster. So kind of on that same topic, since they had such a reduced construction timeline, really minimized the opportunity for material loss and for emissions from commutes and that kind of a thing. So really this very efficient, tidy, organized overall process resulting in a significantly less waste than you would see traditionally. The next business that I'm going to talk about is a door manufacturing firm based on Vancouver Island as well. So they make about 25,000 doors per year. They go through a lot of wood from local sawmills, but wanted to highlight some really cool circular practices that they have in place. So they, as I said, they go through a ton of wood, making all of these doors out of locally harvested wood from Vancouver Island. A lot of companies that go through this volume of material, they'll send it to landfill, maybe compost, maybe they'll have like a partnership with a farmer or something that will take it. But what this company does is they capture all of the sawdust on site from this wood. They have a special corner of their factory that's got a briquette machine, and what they do is they press the sawdust, which is all from kiln-fired wood. They press it into fire briquettes. These are sold by the pallet to local businesses and individuals in the community. So this is a whole new revenue stream from the company. Before they started doing this, they were paying just out the nose to have this sawdust trucked to a local landfill. So they made a one-time investment in this machine, and then are able to have this really great additional revenue stream that's really easy to operate, that provides an alternative to traditional firewood or other kinds of heat sources. So some really cool savings from this practice. They save approximately 520 metric tons of sawdust per year. All of this is remanufactured into these briquettes. So that 520 metric tons, which was previously being sent to landfill, was resulting in landfill emissions of over 51 tons of carbon emissions. So really huge impact environmentally. And then again, touching on that financial benefit, rather than having to pay to dispose of this, a lot of volume that they were going through, they have this new additional revenue stream, which can really kind of help buffer through economic upturns and downturns. So beyond their sawdust remanufacturing, they had another several really cool circular practices that were in place that I really wanted to highlight during today's presentation. So one thing that they did was if they had any imperfect doors, so these are doors that might have had like a small blemish on the wood, or doors that weren't made in their regular production schedule, but made from just additional materials from their offcuts. They had a section of their factory called the door store, and all of these were still really high quality, beautiful doors, and they would sell them at a discount. Another really great thing about this organization was they had really strong purchasing preferences for their raw materials and the supplies that used in manufacturing. So all of their wood was supplied in bulk from local sawmills, so just really reducing those transport emissions and supporting the local economy. They also had a lot of really eco-friendly finishings. And then lastly, they had some really cool material reuse practices across their whole operations. So if they had wood offcuts, these would be used to build additional shelving across the factory and the warehouse, and also to build pallets to help transport or store their products. Whenever they received cardboard boxes from suppliers, they would reuse it between 10 to 20 times just for internal storage purposes. So they would never pay for cardboard or like storage containers on their own. They would just use what they had on hand. And then lastly, also related to their incoming supplies, but any corner strips that they collected, these would be reused to wrap their pallets. So they really had a strong reuse culture across the facility. All of this resulted in significantly lower costs to purchase supplies related to packaging and storage. The last business that I want to talk about today is a recycled aggregate supplier and processor based on Vancouver Island. So the traditional process regarding aggregate for construction. So if you're at a construction site, part of the process of preparing the site for a new build might involve removing some waste soil and waste aggregate. So traditionally what happens is that is collected and then it's trucked to a local landfill. And then often sites will require virgin aggregate, whether that's sand, specific kind of gravel, that kind of a thing. So that will be trucked from a supplier. It's most times a virgin material. So significant embodied emissions from using these virgin materials, and then also emissions related to landfill. So recycled aggregate supplier, they have kind of come up with a solution to this traditional process. So we see we've got this construction site here. When a business has waste soil from their construction project, it can be brought to this recycled aggregate service. And what they do is they turn this waste soil into a resource. So they have a specific kind of tech stack that they use to wash and sort their waste soils and separate them into their submaterials. So they have things like rock, clay, gravel, sand. They have a closed loop system, so all of the water that processes it is treated and recycled, so it's very low water usage and very low local environmental impact. And then as a result, they have these regenerated aggregate products that they sell in bulk to um, local customers. So these are direct alternatives to traditional virgin materials, and this really reduces the embodied carbon of these construction projects that use these materials. So just kind of continuing on from the last slide, talking about that process that they use, they're able to take this kind of waste soil. Traditionally, this would generally just go to landfill, but they're able to separate it into its subcomponents, and all of these are sold as a new product. So some benefits to this kind of new process or new approach to aggregate disposal and aggregate supply. Firstly, this is a traditional waste stream that companies spend a lot of money trucking over to dispose. That really takes up a lot of space in local landfills. It's kind of just seen as a problem. It takes that waste and turns it into a resource. This reduces the demand for virgin aggregate, creates all of these new jobs as well, and is a really great way for construction projects to reduce their embodied emissions. Kind of tying on to the last piece, it reduces the strain on landfills. So I know most local municipalities have pretty set targets for reducing waste sent to landfill, just because there is a little bit of strain on those. So this kind of reduces the volume of waste that goes to them, and is able to put that waste to use in new construction. And then lastly, just reduces emissions related to transport. So kind of both ways, the emissions related to trucking that waste to pretty remote landfills, as well as emissions reductions from transporting virgin aggregate to the aggregate supplier and then to site.
Thank you, Maddie. You have heard from some businesses around BC about circular actions they have taken. Squamish also has a busy and innovative construction sector with over 70 small and medium-sized companies focused on sustainable building, tiny homes, modular homes, timber products, and custom timber frame home design. I would now like to bring on Jake Nichols to share some of the ways his construction company has incorporated circular principles into their work.
So some of the strategies that we use on our construction projects to reduce the amount of waste on our sites and projects is we try and simplify the design of the houses that we're doing. We will stick to standard lengths, ideally 2 or 4 foot lengths, so you can reduce the amount of sheathing, drywall, all those other materials that go into the projects. It also means that we can get standard lengths from the hardware stores. We can take that to site. There's less cutting required on site, so it's sort of all around savings for construction projects. And that obviously has a lot of cost savings with it as well. Another strategy that we do is we panelize our own projects. So we'll prefabricate them off-site. We will then take them to the side of the project and crane them into place. And we've also been practicing a little bit with modular building. So we would get it pre-built in modules off-site entirely. It gets trucked onto site and again gets craned into place, but you can get the module units pretty much entirely finished and then stack them together like Lego blocks. There's pros and cons to each of these strategies, but they're all a way to bring more certainty on quality, cost, time, and everything to make a more efficient site. And then you're also reducing the amount of waste created by bringing sort of that manufacturing mindset into the construction process. You can see in this image here, we've got a pretty simple building, reasonably straight walls, reasonably simple roof layout. We've also designed this so that multiple of these designs could be stacked up together. It minimizes the amount of turns, corners, so the amount of surface area as well, which makes a more efficient building. and it just altogether is a simplified thing. And then we've tried to make it look a bit more architecturally interesting by adding elements to the exterior rather than making a difficult design and layout. Next slide. Another really effective thing that we can do to reduce our impact on the environment and to reduce the amount of waste that we have in construction is simply by reusing materials either from the project if there's an existing structure on the property before you go to work, or in either renovation or demolition and a new build. So trying to take any of the materials that come from that and repurposing them, or sourcing materials that have come from demolition or deconstruction on another site. There is a saying that the lowest carbon building is the one that's already there, so trying to renovate and upgrade the existing structure is a great strategy. This project here, we actually reclaimed all the fur from factories down in Vancouver that were dismantled. So everything other than the roof deck made of wood that you can see in this picture has come from reclaimed wood from existing projects. So, there's a cost saving there. There's a greenhouse gas saving. Yeah, it's just generally overall better, and it tells a cool story as well. It's good marketing, great for your clients. Another simple strategy that we use if we can't find a way to reuse or repurpose that material on the project is we'll see if any of our staff want to use it. They'll take it to their houses or cabins or whatever and reuse it. And then another great option is the rebuild center that we have here in town. So trying to work with them to make sure that material can get reused somewhere else if you're unable to. That's it.
Thank you, Jake. And moving on, we would like to share some of these resources that we talked about earlier in the webinar. The Synergy Foundation worked with the Regional District of Nanaimo to produce this information-rich construction waste best practices resources guide, and it can be found on the Regional District of Nanaimo's website. A useful local resource is a 2020 report commissioned by the District of Squamish on demolition and deconstruction. It tracks the flow of building materials in the area, reviews best practices for managing construction and demolition waste in other places, and looks into market opportunities for recycled materials. Lastly, a reminder of the Sea to Sky free downloadable waste diversion signage. Once again, a thank you to the District of Squamish and the Province of BC's Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program for making this webinar series possible.